Thanks everyone for joining the new LEA Data Managers training for the 2020-21 school year. This training is held by the Office of the State Superintendent of Education, held by the Office of the Chief Information Officer. So let's go ahead and get started. I apologize, my name is Shanae Akamolayan. I also work in CIO and I am one of today's presenter. Today, we will review the following items listed on the agenda. If you have any questions, please ask throughout the meeting. In order to participate in this meeting, you have two options. The first one is to use the question or chat box to respond to any questions or concerns that you may have. Option two, you can raise your hand and you will be unmuted so that you can speak. What to expect? Questions are not visible on the screen to all attendees. If you raise your hand, you will be identified and unmuted so that you may speak. So let's go ahead and get started. What is a LEA Data Manager? Essentially, a LEA Data Manager is assigned at each LEA to serve as OSSE main point of contact for data management and collections. As the LEA Data Manager, your responsibilities remain largely the same from year to year, with some modifications depending on the LEA or the state needs. This session will provide an introduction to the LEA Data Manager's topics and responsibilities. We also have two links here on the slide, which you can access later and review the LEA Data Management Policy, which OSSE has outlined, and it gives you an idea as to what you should do and what you should adhere to, such as resolving any data issues within 5 business days. Also, the second link is the LEA Data Managers Checklist for the 2020-21 school year. That is also available on the website, and you can click through that and make sure that you are completing all the tasks and necessary steps to get started for the start of the school year. Data liaisons. Every LEA has a data liaison assigned to their particular LEA, where they can get support for data elements and data systems managed by CIO. When an LEA submits a ticket in OST, most tickets are auto-assigned to the data liaison, although some topics may actually go to the policy owner. Throughout the school year, the data liaison will schedule regular check-ins at various intervals. So around enrollment audit, for instance, you might have a weekly check-in. At the start of school, you might have a weekly check-in, but later on throughout the school year, it may change into a monthly check-in. Also, we have a link on this PowerPoint that you can click on, and you can be able to identify the specific person who is assigned to your LEA as a data liaison. Let's talk about the OSSE support tool. The OSSE support tool, or called OST, is a bi-directional communication tool where LEAs can contact the state for support and technical assistance by submitting a ticket. It allows LEA and OSSE to securely share personally identifiable information, or PII, for student level data, or even teacher level data. Those tickets can be related, the tickets can be related to data errors or system issues. Users are able to view the progress of the ticket and allow OSSE, and it also allows OSSE and the user to communicate back and forth. And this is a quick-based application that we have. I want to highlight that when you go to submit a ticket, we have a page that appears, and there are videos providing guidance to resolve common issues. You are able to click on any of the view links to view the video. They're no longer than 5 minutes, and it's just key information to help you resolve some common issues that we commonly see coming through the OSSE support tool ticket. So who should have access to the OST? It should be you, the LEA Data Manager, the LEA Enrollment Audit POC, the LEA Special Education POC, non-public SEDS PLCs, your LEA Transportation PLCs, and LEA Assessment PLCs. As I stated earlier, some of the ticket categories do get assigned to either the business owner or the policy owner. So such as the LEA Transportation PLC, if they submit a ticket related to busing, that ticket will get routed to the Department of Transportation, opposed to your data liaison. What categories does the OST cover? These are just examples, but enrollment, student characteristics such as first name, last name, at-risk indicators, and the list goes on. Unified data errors, we'll talk about that later. SEDS support, which is our special education data system, or SEDS for short. TOTE, which is a busing system. So it's a TOTE transportation tool, policy questions, statewide assessment, test securities, accommodations, etc. And the list goes on. Moving on, we're going to speak about data flows. I'll pass this over to my colleague, Leah.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Leah Diggs-Natico. I am in CIO office. As a data manager, an important aspect is knowing and understanding how OSSE receives your data and what it is used for. This slide lists some of the data systems and applications that receive and then use the data received from your LEA and the various purposes. So first we have the statewide longitudinal education data system, which we also call SLED. And this is the state's comprehensive repository of student data, and it's a feeder for other data systems. Next, we have our special education data system, which we call SEDS. And SEDS has the primary system for inputting and updating students with disabilities information and for documenting those services provided. SEDS is actually our system of record for students with disabilities. Then we have the Transportation Online Tool for Education, which we also refer to as TOTE. And this is a quick-based application in which LEAs will place transportation requests for students with disabilities. And then we have CLICK, which is our data application that empowers users to easily create a range of flexible interactive visualizations and view of data analytics. So basically, CLICK receives a lot of the information, and then it puts it in a visually appealing and easily digestible manner for you to view the information. So here we have your LEA SIS, which is a student information system. We have our different OSSE environments. So we have SLED, and then we have our what we call our downstream systems. So we have SEDS, TOTE, CLICK, and then there are other systems. And then it's how do we use the data? So we have enrollment audit, accountability reporting, federal and local reporting, and again, transportation for students with disabilities. Before the start of school, there are multiple steps that occur in order for you to be able to view the data that I previously mentioned. And this slide shows a high-level overview of the required steps provided or that are required before the start of school. Please note we will go into further detail and provide the resources at the end of this session. LEAs need to complete the LEA SIS mappings and the LEA data mapping application using the data collection template, which we will discuss in a moment. Then you're going to need to schedule your SIS configuration session with CIO, and this is so that OSSE can pull the data. If you're an LEA that's using eSchool Plus as a SIS, this step does not apply. Once the data is mapped and the feed is turned on, the LEA needs to validate the data and the LEA Feed management module, and this is housed in SLED. So you can think of this module as a holding place of sorts, and only at the beginning of the school year, as this will allow the LEA to confirm that the mappings that were completed in the LEA data mapping application are accurate, and also confirm that the information entered into the SIS is accurate. For example, sometimes test students are entered into the SIS. You want to remove the test students during this process. And so the LEA Feed management module will allow you to view if you put in test student 1, or some folks have put in pop stars in as test students. So this will allow you to review that and make sure that you remove those students. Once the data has been validated by the LEA, CIO will then push the data into SLED. And you can think of it like the front end of SLED is where you'll be able to view the information. And then once the LEA reviews the data that's in SLED, then the data, and confirm that the data is accurate, the data will be pushed to our downstream systems. So I've talked about what the needs are that have to occur prior to the start of school, but what else as the LEA do you need to do? So if you're a new LEA, PCSB will actually submit an entity management identification form, which we also call an EMI form, to CIO. CIO will then take this information and create what we call a school and LEA information management system, which is also known as SLIMS. Using SLIMS, we are able to create accounts in SLED, SEDS, and eSchool Plus. However, this is not for users. We're not creating user accounts. We're just creating your actual school account in those systems. Now, all LEAs are going to need to enter their point of contacts, or what we call POCs, into eSchool Plus. All LEAs are required to use eSchool Plus for their point of contacts and their calendars. However, some LEAs also use eSchool Plus as their student information system. So you're going to enter in your point of contacts, and you're going to create or update your calendars in eSchool Plus. You're also then going to review the data collection template, which we'll talk about in a moment, and enrollment codes, which we'll also talk about. You're going to update the SIS to ensure that all those data elements are present. So OSSE adds new data elements to the data collection template annually. So you're going to have to make sure that the data elements that we've entered in our data collection template are in your student information system so that you can ensure that you are capturing the data that is required by OSSE. This slide shows what the daily LEA feed looks like. I say daily because at the start of school, we have the LEA Feed management module, which will play a role in this. However, after the start of school, that module is really for informational purposes only. So at the top, we have different types of data sources. So we have your non-statewide SIS, which for example would be PowerSchool. You have your statewide SIS, which is eSchool Plus, and then DCPS uses Aspen. So data will flow to ADT, which we'll talk about in a moment, for non-statewide SIS. And then down to SLED, and then to the downstream systems. So we have our Special Education Data System SEDS, we have CLIC, and then within CLIC we have a multitude of different applications. Enrollment Audit and Child Count application, which you will become familiar with, and a duplicative enrollment application as well. So next we're going to talk about the data collection templates that OSSE has. And I will turn that over to my colleague, Shanae.
All right, so let's talk about the data collection template. So OSSE has 5 data collection templates that we receive from all LEAs every night. 4 of the 5 are required from all LEAs. The 5th one is optional. So the first data collection template that we have is the demographics. It has such things as your local student information, ID number for the student's full name, date of birth, race, ethnicity, address, their residency, language, farm status, universal health care, all assessment, and the list goes on. So we do, this is not a full list of all the data fields that we collect for demographics. This is just some. Also, we have the second data collection template, which is contacts. And these are all the fields that we do collect here for each student. And that's their primary contact, the contact type. So is it mother, father, auntie, uncle, foster parent, self. Next, we have the contact name. We also have their telephone number, email address, and their address, which is different, which may be different from the student. The third one is the enrollment. This data collection template lets us know if the student is actively or inactively enrolled at your LEA. Actively enrolled meaning they are attending, they have a stage 5 enrollment and they are attending your LEA. The enrollment data collection template includes the LEA ID number, the school code, the school year, which this year will be school year 2020-21, the attending school code. We ask for the attending school code if you think about students who may be placed at a non-public, but your LEA is responsible for the oversight for that student. And so we would expect that attending school code to be different. Also, we We collect the student's grade level, the stages of enrollment. Right now, we only collect stages 4 and 5 for your students, and we'll get into the stages of enrollment shortly. Next, the enrollment code, how or where did the student come from before they attended your school. The exit date if the student does leave in the school during the school year or at the end of the school year, and then the exit code that corresponds with that. Where's the student planning to go? The next two data collection templates is the attendance, and that's just let us know whether or not the student was present or otherwise for your school. And essentially that data collection is pretty short. We have the attendance date and the attendance status code along with the attendance absent reason. So for instance, if today was a school day, we will receive today's date in the nightly feed and whether or not the student was present or absent or otherwise based on the defined attendance codes that we have. And then if they were absent, what was the absent reason? The next data collection template is the adult program. This one is optional and we only have it for adult programs, and only a handful of adult schools actually use this for adult LEAs. And essentially what it allows us to do when we're talking about the eSchool Plus calendars is to go down essentially to the student level to know exactly when the student is supposed to be present for school. And we understand that adult programs are a little bit different. They might have one school with several locations, and therefore we might get a calendar associated with that student. And so that is the calendar program code, the calendar program description, the start date and end date for that student. And then we also have, if we want to go down to the class level, we can have the class name, the class start and end date. And that's just really at a school if a student is enrolled at a particular program and then maybe the program changes within the semester and quarter, so we need to go down to that level. That is not really commonly used to that depth. To keep in mind, the data collection templates, as I stated, we do receive them nightly from your LEA. It is an accumulative file, so if a student enrolled today, you will send that student over. If it's a stage 4 or stage 5 enrollment code, you will send that across. Tomorrow, we expect to see that student. We expect to see that student record all the way into the end of the school year. And if the student did exit, we expect to see an exit code for that student come across, but we also expect to see that student come across in a feed. And therefore, we should see the student for every day of the school year with the contact information, enrollment, demographics, and also the attendance. So we have other ancillary student level data collection templates that we receive from the LEAs during a certain time of the school year, and we'll discuss the 4 different ones. The first one is the discipline. So usually towards the end of the school year, over the leading close to the summer, we have a discipline collection template, and that essentially allows us to know if there were any disciplinary issues at the school or actions and what actions were taken and the details behind it. And so that includes the LEA information, demographics, the incident, disciplinary actions, alternative settings, students with disabilities, and monitoring. That collection is shared towards the beginning of the school year with all LEAs. The next one is the certified grads list. This is one that we collect towards the end of the summer. We get the final certified grads list for the charters from the Public Charter School Board, and then from DCPS, the DCPS Central Office will send that over. And that is a list of all students who received a high school or a regular diploma, an IAP certificate, an extended diploma program. So we expect those students to be listed if they did graduate in the closing school year. So essentially we're getting close to that time where we will receive this file from the Public Charter School Board and DCPS, and it should list all your graduates from your LEA for the 2019-20 school year. The next one we have is a migrant student. This is typically collected at the end of the school year. We just did this for data validation for any of our LEA data managers on the line that did work with the LEA at the end of the school year. And essentially what this is either we receive a letter from your head of school affirming that you do not have any migrant students, because typically we aren't that close to like farms and fishing areas, and so we don't typically have migrant students in the district. However, if we do get a student, we do have this data collection template with the LEA ID number, the student demographic information, and the migrant student information as well. Next, and the last one, we have alternative program designation. And this is associated with that program where the LEA will apply for certain schools at their LEAs to be considered an alternative program. And this comes with additional funding or a different funding for the enrollment audit and child count process. And essentially in this collection template, it is appended to or sent across through ADT. We'll talk about the automatic data transfer. And essentially what we need is the attendee school information, the student USI, and the student local ID number. So we look for the program status, whether the student is there for a diploma, a GED, or a certificate of completion for the student, and then if they have ever had a secondary academic credential of a yes or no. But this one has already been, the schools have already been identified for this, this current school year. So the schools who are participants do know who they are on this call. Let's move on to the LEA data mapping tool. So the LEA data mapping tool, what is that? That is an application that we have for our LEAs who do not use eSchool Plus. If your LEA uses eSchool Plus, you do not have to worry about this piece because OSSE already does the mapping for you. So what is the LEA data mapping tool, or LDM? You might hear us say occasionally throughout the school year, and essentially allows the LEA to map all data fields in those 5 data collections to your SIS. So the LEA data collection, those 5 components that you will have, has to be mapped. You have to tell us, you go into the LEA data mapping system, you will enter in your SIS values, your ADT information, and your query information. Also, so what does that mean? If, especially if you're a new LEA this year and not using eSchool Plus, what you will have to do is log into the system, let us know, for instance, the student's first name. How can we pull data nightly from your SIS that tells us where to find the student's first name in your system? So what is the table? What is the table? And what is the table and where that field is located on the back end of their system? Okay, so when you go in, the LEA can add or update any of that SIS mappings to configure the ADT fields. The LEA also can view the information throughout the school year if there are any fields that are unmapped, incomplete data mappings, or errors. Sometimes you may have unified data errors, which is a click application stating that, let's say you have 500 students and 500 students do not have, what's a great example, a race. And so essentially that tells us that the mapping was not completed for your school, and that may result into an unmapped value, which is resulting into an error. And you can always go into the LEA data mapping tool to go ahead and put in that where the table is located in the back end of your system and where that value is located. And if it's a multi-option, such as a race, right, you can say that an Asian student value maps to this particular value in my system. A maps to OSSE's value. OSSE value of AM can map to the value of 2. And so that lets us know that when we see a 2, we're going to map that back to AM, and AM is related to a Native American or student. Okay. Each year we do roll over the LEA data mapping tool. Usually that takes place in about March. where you can start setting up those mappings for the new school year. So once you've completed the mappings, all we do is roll those mappings over. If we add new data elements to collect for the new school year, you will have to go into the system and do those mappings. You have to do those mappings for the new data elements. And if your student information remain the same, if you have Power School and you continue with Power School, you do not have to map the remaining fields because they are already done in the system. If you have any questions, you can always submit a ticket in OST. Also, just to let you know, we do have a video which you can watch to learn how to map your data fields in the LEA Data Mapping tool. Just a heads up that you should be rolling your systems over at least 15 calendar days before the start of school, and also, business days before the start of school, and also 13 days to make sure your data is feeding. That's just a little shout out for so you don't get any reach outs from OSSE. But many of you should have already completed this piece, and you should be in the state where you are doing your configurations. Okay. I can't stress enough that it's very important to ensure your LEA data mappings are complete and accurate, because that would allow us to pull that data from your system accurately. So we're going to move on down the pipeline. Everything that we're discussing is connecting and building. So once you've completed the LDM, then you will have your SIS configuration session, and that would allow us to set up those queries so that we can start the automated data transfer, or ADT for short. You hear ADT stated a lot. And so what is that? It's an application that is a bridge from the LEA SIS to OSSE systems. And that's how we're pulling your data every night from your student information system. And so essentially the process for ADT is that you will review the LEA data collection template for the new school year, complete the LEA data mapping tool, attend a configuration session, and that's typically held at the beginning of the school year, right around this time. I think it started about a week ago. There's a program that needs to be installed on whatever machine that we're pulling your data from. Also, SQL queries are then implemented once we are able to connect and we can see all those mappings in the LEA data mapping tool. We'll set up those queries, and then the feed is enabled or turned on, just depending on whether or not your LEA is ready to send data to OSSE for the start of the new school year. And then once, as I've stated, the data are sent daily to OSSE once you give us the thumbs up. Any questions on the line? You want to see a screenshot of the LEA data mapping tool. The only thing is that we don't have a training database, so it will be a real LEA information and a mapping to their system. But as I stated, there is a video. We have the link in the resource section of this PowerPoint, which will be posted tomorrow. And then you can go ahead and click on that link, and we can drop the link in the video, and it walks you through how to do the mappings and what you should see. Okay, thank you. So ADT, we have daily fees. When do we pull it? We pull it at 2 p.m. and again from 4 to 7 p.m. The ADT manually pulls data due to the in case there is a failure. So why do we? And that's the reason why we do it. So we do it for redundancy purposes in case there's a failure or a timeout when we try to pull at 2 o'clock or at 4 to 7 o'clock. And so what does that mean? So at 2 o'clock, we will try to pull information from your student information system. If it works, great. Then again, at 4 to 7 p.m., we will again attempt to connect to your via ADT to your client box, as they might refer to it. And we try to pull data. All right, so we have the redundancy. So again, we try to pull from 4 to 7 p.m. And if we receive the data, then we will not use the 2 o'clock data pull. However, if the 4 o'clock to 7 o'clock pull fails, but the 2 o'clock was successful, we will pull the 2 o'clock data. we will use the 2 o'clock data and the next day and that feed that you will see the next day. If there is a failure both for 2 o'clock and 4 to 7 p.m., we will just persist the previous day's feed or the previous successful feed from your LEA. How is data pulled for the 2021 school year? So there are 2 options. Obviously, we're using ADT. The LEA can host, or OSSE can host the client. And essentially, there can be a direct connection to your LEA student information system, or you can export your data to a CSV file and we will pull from that file. It just depends on your comfort level. And so when it comes to hosting, it usually be referred to as an ADT machine. And that's where we will pull. And we can host that here at OSSE, or you can host it at your school. If you host it at your school, please keep it in a secure place. Historically, we've had people, schools where we could not connect to pull the nightly feeds for days, and come to find out that that ADT client box, or essentially the PC, was in a location and the janitor was unplugging the PC every night to clean. And so therefore we were not receiving their data. So don't be in that predicament. Make sure if you're going to host your own PC, which is perfectly fine, make sure it's available and on where we can reach it and pull your data based on those 5 data collection templates. Okay. So what happens after we pull the information from your system? The nightly jobs here at OSSE are processed and they kick off. And then as they are processing from that 4 o'clock time mark, it goes all the way, it gets pushed, that data gets pushed to downstream systems. And typically all our systems are updated by 10 a.m. 10 a.m. is literally like one-click app that we have that has to be updated at that point. But typically SLED is available at 8 a.m. And then most of our click applications are available at 9 a.m. For your viewing. So if you get into the office early or you log into that computer early, such as 7 a.m., you will not see your data updated. Give it some time, and then you should be able to log in and see that information updated based on your nightly feed. Just as a reminder, for the nightly feed, we said 4 to 7 p.m. It is random how it kicks off for each LEA. So keep that in mind if you're trying to get data updated in your student information system so it can feed over for the next day. Okay. I'm sorry, there's a question on the line. How do we get it fixed? I'm not for sure what we're referring to. Sorry, I may have missed that. Kenya, if you want to come off of mute and ask your question, that's great. I know you're an eSchool Plus user, so if you're referring to ADT, you do not have to worry about that. Any setups and configuration, we pull it from our side. Okay, just to go a little, oh, sorry, okay, just to have an ADT data feed issue resolution checklist. Sorry, let's see if we can get you off of mute. Yeah. Okay, you should.
Oh, hi, this is Tina. Sorry, so this was just a clarifying question. I'm assuming after you just said this wouldn't apply to us since we have eSchools, but if the data wasn't feeding for some reason and those 2 polls were not successful, how would we go about getting that resolved?
Yeah,
is that possible? Schools?
Yep, we'll go through a sequence of things, but one thing you can do as a last result is definitely reach out to your data liaison. You can submit an OST ticket or send them an email just requesting that gets looked into if you have a few failures.
And then my other question is how do we know if it was successful? Do I go in daily to just double check, click, or where would it say feed successful?
So it's in the LEA Feed Management, which is a little bit later in this PowerPoint. So
sorry. Okay.
No, you're fine. You log into SLED, and there's a data management tab that you can click on, and the first one listed should be the LEA Feed Management, and that allows you to see which it's like that place in between what you're sending in your student information system or what you see there, and then is that stop point before what you see in SLED. So you can see if anything is failing, if it's certain students, your entire fail, if it's just one of the collections that is failing, you can see that information.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. All right then, so what's listed here on this slide is essentially a quick checklist just to confirm that everything is being sent well. So essentially how to troubleshoot your data feed issues. One, you will log into the LEA data mapping tool and just check and see if there are any errors or unmapped values that may be causing an issue. The second thing, log into SLED to access the LEA Feed management module to check for any errors or check for any failed data feeds. The next step will be to log into Click to access the Unified Data Errors application to check for any related errors. So typically you might see a large amount or a small amount of students depending on what it is, and trying to figure out where is the issue coming from. And the last one, of course, is check with you can contact your LEA data manager to have the ADT configuration and data pool verified. If you know your mappings as well, you believe your SIS should be feeding, but there are failures, they can contact and they'll be in contact with one of the colleagues and CIO to get that settled for you. Okay. So we're going to move to enrollment. All right. I'll pass it back to Leah.
Okay. So in the district, we have 6 stages of enrollment. So the stages of enrollment are listed here on this slide. And so we have stage 1, application by student to attend the LEA. Next, we have stage 2, which is acceptance and notification of an available slot for the student by the LEA. Stage 3 is acceptance of slot by student and submission of enrollment information. Stage 4 is registration of the student in the student information system, which we call a SIS, by the LEA. Stage 5 is receipt of educational services, meaning that the student is physically attending the LEA. And then stage 6 is the LEA's obligation to determine eligibility for special education services or to provide special education services for an existing individualized education program. And this is triggered upon completion of stage 4. So really stage 4 and stage 6 happen simultaneously. And these stages of enrollment, these were not created by OSSE. They are actually in the DCMR, which is the DC Municipal Regulations. And so if your LEA actually uses My School DC, around stage 3, OSSE will be able to display to you some of your student information in Click. So we have applications called early access applications in which participants within My School DC are able to see data for incoming students, and that's only if they are using My School DC. And in SLED, OSSE will display stage 4 and stage 5 enrollment. So really stage 1 and stage 2, OSSE really does not get involved in. Stage 3 is really only if you are within My School DC. If you are not within My School DC, then you will start to see your data in OSSE's applications in stage 4. And some applications only will display the stage 5 information for students, meaning the student is physically attending the LEA. And we are expecting attendance for those students as well if they are stage 5 enrolled. All right, next slide. So you may be asking, okay, so what are you responsible for? So you are responsible for ensuring that we are receiving accurate and timely data entry for enrollment and withdrawal. So as you recall, we're receiving your data on a daily basis. So if the student withdraws, please make sure that you are entering that information in a timely manner, and the same for withdrawals. So enrollments and withdrawals, please provide those in a timely manner. Recording at least one valid entry or exit code per student in the SIS. And this will reflect the student's enrollment and disenrollment. Collecting and retaining documentation to support the codes that are being used, and providing documentation for all exit codes for students within 5 days of the student's exit. And we came up with 5 days because that is per our data management policy. So we actually have a data management policy that is available in our SLED library. And so you're able to view that at any point in time. And on the slide also, we have a reference to the entry and exit guidance. OSSE updates that annually. And we provide that to all the LEAs in the springtime so that you have time to then update your student information system if we've made any updates or additions or removing any of the codes for your student information system. The guidance is very thorough, and we provide usage guidelines as well. So we also, in addition to just providing the code, we also give you information on when should you use this. And so that will provide you with more assistance when you are inputting the information for the students. Next slide. Oh, thank you. So we have the entry code categories. So we have continuation. So if you have a student that's remaining at your LEA, you would use the continuation codes. If you have a student that's changing the LEA but is going to still be enrolled within the district, you would use a transfer code. So for example, if the student is at DCPS, but they are transferring to KIPP, both LEAs within the district, you would use a transfer code. Now, if you have a student that's enrolling for the first time in a US school, then you would use the original entry code. But if you're having a student that is first time enrolled in the district LEA, or if they're re-enrolling within the district, we have the entry codes for those as well. So as with the entry codes, we have different exit codes. So we have an exit code for if a student has completed their required program of study. We have one for the end of year. And we have a transfer, if the student's transferring within the school year. We have exit codes for if the student leaves the state. So if they're leaving the district or they're going to another state or another country, we have exit codes that are specific for that. We have exit codes for that are discharged. So if the student is exited due to an LEA disciplinary or another policy reason, we have specific exit codes for that. We have disengagement codes for students who are discontinued schooling before the maximum age. And all of these codes, you have to be careful when you're using these codes because we actually use these codes for reporting purposes. So please be mindful and be careful when you are entering these codes because they are being used for reporting purposes. Okay. And so then we have, so what are the impacts of these exit codes? And so some of the exit codes require supplemental documentation, which means you have to make sure that you're holding onto the information and you're going to provide it to us in a module that we have called exit management. And if we do not receive that information, the students will still remain on your SLED roster, which means that when you log into SLED, you're still going to see that student listed as a student that is enrolled at your LEA. Now, you might be wondering, okay, so what type of exit code will require documentation? So if we have a student that is leaving to be homeschooled, OSSE actually has a homeschooling office. So you're going to have to provide documentation that OSSE actually approved that parent to be able to homeschool their child before we are able to actually remove that child or the student from your SLED roster. And so again, you're going to be uploading that documentation and exit management, and it is actually a manual process. So you will provide the documentation to OSSE, we will manually review it and let you know whether or not the documentation was accepted or not. And we have a whole process and documents and guidance on that as well. So again, impacts of this. So we have, again, statewide longitudinal education system, so SLED, but we also have ACGR, so your adjusted cohort graduation rate. So again, those exit codes matter. We also have the special education data system. So for students with disabilities, Some exit codes you will be able to use to remove a student from your roster in SEDS, meaning you also no longer have, you're required to provide services for that student. However, not all of them. So just because a student may leave your LEA or exit your LEA does not mean that your obligation to that student is over. And so we do provide guidance on that as well. Also, the DC School Report Card. This is a report card that is available to the public. And so you're able to also, there are attendance and mobility metrics that are displayed to parents and to the public. So again, those exit codes are important, and we ask that you please make sure that you are updating the information in a timely manner as well. So here on this side, we have a link to the entry and exit guidance for this current school year. Next slide. There are times in which a student may be enrolled within more than one LEA or school, and this is called a duplicative enrollment. So duplicative enrollments impact the transfer of student records for students with disabilities and also enrollment data. So again, please be very mindful when you are enrolling a student. You can check in SLED if you have any questions to view whether or not the student is currently enrolled at another LEA. So there are different types of duplicative enrollments that are displayed on the slide. So we have duplicative enrollments within the same LEA and duplicative enrollments between two different LEAs. So the first one, duplicative enrollments within the same LEA. The LEA should exit the student with the correct exit information. OSSE does not get involved in this. Duplicative enrollments between two LEAs. That's a different story. So last school year, OSSE created the duplicative enrollment application to assist LEAs in resolving duplicative enrollments year-round. In order to do so, we make an initial determination using what we call the deduplication logic. We've actually used this process, the deduplication logic, for several school years in a different process, but then for last school year, we brought it over into our duplicative enrollment application to use it year-round. A few things to note. So adult LEAs and community-based organizations, which are called CBOs, are excluded from the deduplication resolution logic. Reason is that for adult LEAs, you are allowed to have a student enrolled in more than one adult LEA. They're allowed to take classes at, and be enrolled in multiple LEAs with the adult LEAs. And so that's a caveat with that application. But if an LEA does not receive a student's enrollment credit based upon the deduplication logic, they can appeal it in the application. So we do have a policy that's actually being updated for this current school year. It should be out shortly. And so you'll have the enrollment period. So there are 4 enrollment periods, and then we have the deadlines for when appeals can be made. But with that, though, LEAs are still required to maintain accurate information in their student information system. So even if you update your, you upload documentation, OSSE provides you, or OSSE denies you enrollment credit for that student, you then need to update your student information system. So even though OSSE has, the official record for the student, it is still your responsibility to update that student information system. Okay, next slide. So next we have overlapping enrollments. So an overlapping enrollment reflects the number of enrollments at the LEA that are overlapping with another enrollment at the same or different school within the district. So you might be wondering, what's the difference between overlapping and duplicative? So overlapping enrollment will actually have an exit date. And so typically that exit date overlaps with an entry date of another school. And more often than not, we find that it's an error on the student, on the LEA in which the student has left. So it might have taken a couple of days for them to exit the student, and when they exit the student, they'll exit using that day's date. However, the student would have been enrolled at another LEA. So again, that's why we ask for you to please make sure you do this in a timely fashion. So we will display that information. It has to be updated in your SIS, and then that will resolve the overlapping enrollment. And so next we'll talk about eSchool Plus.
Thanks, Leah. So let's talk about eSchool Plus. Time is getting away from us, but we'll get through it. And so eSchool Plus, certain LEA, it is the statewide student information system, and it's available to all LEAs to use it. But not all LEAs use it as a student system. However, all LEAs must use it to input calendars, point of contact, and also DC report card related content. And so for the points of contact, essentially you will enter in specific LEA points of contact with an organizational email address that are used to send communications to LEA staff and grant access to some applications such as CLIC and SLED and Enrollment Audit and Duplicative Enrollment are some good examples. So that was a question in the chat, so please make sure that is updated. Like I said, at the end of this, we do have resources, and this PowerPoint will be available online. Next, we have calendars, and essentially it documents the instructional and non-instructional days or membership days, as you may know them, at the LEA school and or program level. Okay, and so this is where you would tell us the first day of school, the last day of school, which many of you have already provided. And then you will also go in and say, okay, this is our holiday break, our spring break, and things of that nature, professional development days. Into that. We do use those instructional days to calculate attendance, how many days a student is present. So we do definitely use that data for attendance, enrollment purposes, and other reporting and analysis. So keep that up to date. If historically, if there's been a snow day or emergency closure, then make sure your eSchool Plus calendar is is updated as soon as possible. Lastly, this is the time frame where the DC report card data has been updated in eSchool Plus on the school profile, school hours, and parent engagement pages. And so this is open for the new LEAs. Definitely get your information in there. For the existing LEAs, please confirm that your data is updated. We have a login link here at the bottom of the screen. All right, jump into SLED. Go ahead, Leah. We can't hear you.
Okay, so SLED stands for the Statewide Longitudinal Education Data System, and it is OSSE's comprehensive repository of student data from early learning to post-secondary. So in SLED, you are going to only see the students that are currently enrolled at your LEA, with the caveat of students that are exited that require documentation. Next slide. So OSSE has moved to the new school year. We did that last Monday. So if you have SLED credentials and you've logged in, you'll notice that there is not any data present. If you do not have SLED credentials, this slide has a link to the OSSE training site where you can sign up for SLED training. So please note, users are given either LEA or school level access based upon their role. This is important because as a data manager, you will be giving access to your staff. Are you going to allow them to view all the students within your LEA or only students at a particular school? These designations will also impact what they're able to see within other applications. And so prior to receiving login credentials, everyone has to attend a mandatory training session if you want to access SLED. If you only want to access CLIC, you still need SLED credentials, but there is a mechanism in place so you can just view CLIC and not SLED. So OSSE has created data management modules within SLED to assist with resolving data issues and discrepancies. So we have LEA Feed management module, which we've spoken about a little bit. Then we have demographic conflicts management, exit management, and prior year exit management. So in order to access the data management module in SLED, the LEA must assign SLED credentials to someone who has eSchool Plus, LEA approver or school approver. I'm sorry. So the user has to have SLED credentials, but also in eSchool Plus, they have to be listed as either the LEA approver or school approver. Okay, next slide. Okay. So we've spoken about the LEA Feed management module a little bit earlier, and we do have a training that's scheduled for later on in July. Well, in the LEA Feed management module, you're going to be able to view the daily enrollment, demographic contacts, attendance, and adult program data feeds. And this also corresponds with the data collection templates that we've also spoken about. So this module will allow you to be able to have better data transparency. You'll be able to resolve issues with your feed. So you'll be able to see if we received your feed or not and the last time we received your feed. You'll be able to view the students that did not make it to SLED. You'll be able to view data prior to us pushing it to SLED. And you'll also be able to use this on a daily basis and view students that are on a sticky roster. So you might be wondering what exactly is a sticky roster. So a record for a student can be sticky if the student record was deleted from the SIS, meaning OSSE received the student information and all of a sudden the next day, it's no longer there. The student record has a missing or incomplete demographic record, but an enrollment record was received. So in order to have a valid enrollment for a student, we need to have both the demographic and the enrollment record for a student. And then also the student record may be missing enrollment record, but has a demographic record that was received. And so again, you might be wondering, why are we highlighting this? And it's because it can be confusing to try to resolve a student issue if for example, the LEA is no longer in your SIS. So if you deleted the student from your SIS and OSSE is showing a duplicative enrollment for that student, you may be wondering, well, I don't know why, because I don't have that student. Sometimes this happens at the beginning of the school year. The student might not have attended, but you went ahead and just deleted the student. So that's one reason why we highlight it, so that you'll be able to see what OSSE is seeing for that student, and you'll be able to resolve it in your SIS. And again, we do have a training on that later on in July. Next slide. Okay, thanks. So at the beginning of the school year, the 2-week trend report that's in the module may be of assistance to you. So again, you'll be able to see for 2 weeks, how was your feed received? Did we receive it? Did we not receive it? How many records did we receive? And so green equals success, red equals failure, and that might be something that is very useful to you at the beginning of the school year. Next slide. Demographic conflicts management. So OSSE reviews the first name, last name, date of birth, race, gender, and ethnicity of the data that you are sending over on a nightly basis. We have an authoritative data set, and if the data is different that you're sending over from what OSSE has, then we're going to flag it in the demographic conflicts management module. It will be the LEA's responsibility to provide OSSE with documentation for us to review. Again, it's a manual review, and we will determine whether or not the information is valid, which you've provided. If so, we will update our authoritative information for that student, and it'll be displayed in SLED and our downstream systems. So if what you're sending over to us is different, when you log into SLED or any of our downstream systems, you're going to see OSSE's authoritative information, not what you're having over in the SIS.
Okay, so it looks like we're at time. I'm not for sure if someone does have the line after us. We just have 5 more minutes worth of time, 5 more minutes worth of content, and so I can talk to it. If you need to drop off for a meeting, then you can do so. We do have this recorded, the session recorded, so you can watch it at your convenience. So I'll continue talking through, but if you have to drop off, I definitely understand. And we can also share the link with everyone who has participated today. Thank you. If you have to drop early, thank you for attending. So the next one I'll talk about really quickly is the exit management, which is also another module underneath data management, and it provides a near real-time notification to LEAs finalizing and addressing discrepancies of the students' stage 5 enrollment records. So Leah talked about you use an exit code. An exit code may require additional documentation to fully exit that student. An example will be the student moved out of state. They moved to Maryland, Virginia, or what have you. And so we need supporting documentation to show proof that the student did exit. There are more guidelines around the adjusted cohort graduation population than pre-K 3 through 8th grade and also adult students. And so that documentation is a little more rigorous, and we do have to adhere to that. And essentially, when you log into the exit management module, if you have exited a student, you will see that enrollment record listed for the student. We group them by 3 different categories: completed exits, which are records that OSSE considers exited and no further action is required by the LEA. Incomplete exits are records requiring LEAs to submit supporting documentation to certify the exit, such as the student moved out of the country. Waiting for enrollment at a public school in the district. So if you're one LEA, a student has left and said they're going to attend another public LEA in the school district, then we expect to see that enrollment, and that student enrollment will remain as incomplete until we see that stage 5 enrollment at the next public LEA in the district. Also, we have some exceptions which will result in a unified data error, such as overlapping enrollment. We also have overlapping enrollments flagged in the system, along with inappropriate use of exit codes. So for instance, we have exit code for students under the age of 5 years old as of September 30th. If you use that for a 6-year-old, we will flag that as an error. Okay, we do have user guides associated with these modules and trainings coming down the pipeline for this school year. The last one that we have in data management is prior year exits, is another module that facilitates the process for LEAs to update stage 5 exit codes for prior school years. So in SLED only shows you student enrollments for the current academic year. So data for school year 1920 is not displayed in SLED. However, if you need to update those exit codes for purposes of ACGR, a student with disability is still remaining on your SEDS roster, you can update that as well. And if you log into the system when it's released, and typically these modules for exit management and prior year exit opens up about the 2nd week in September, whereas demographics opens up sooner. When it opens up for this new school year, you'll see all your student enrollments for school year 1920. And that means if you had 500 students and there were, let's say, 600 enrollment records, meaning students have exited and enrolled and exited, you will see all those enrollments in prior year exit, and you can update those exit codes if necessary. We still adhere to the same guidelines as in exit management. If the student uses a certain exit code, we may require documentation. It is also paired with students with disabilities in the SEDS requirements, and so some exit codes do not require exit documentation for general education students, but are required for students with disabilities. Okay, the system will help guide that as well. Prior year exits, just when do you use it? You just have to know, did the student exit code change? Maybe you thought the student was going to re-enroll in a new academic with you, but they moved out of state. Does the student exit code need to be updated for the DC report card? Then that's when you can use the last academic year, you can update that exit code. Does the student's exit code need to be updated for the ACGR purposes? If you're a diploma granting LEA, you can also update those exit codes. Did the student with disabilities exit in the previous school year and did not re-enroll but remains on your LEA SEDS roster, then you would once again want to use this module. Just moving to CLIC really fast. CLIC is really known as CLIC Sense, and it is an application used for interactive reporting and dashboards with charts and graphs. It serves as a visualization software to simplify analysis and help make information and inform business decisions. And so we have quite a few CLIC applications available to the LEAs, and this is a list of some commonly used ones that you would hear about. I will say right now the early access applications are available to you. We did have a training on that earlier by the business owners. We will be rolling our apps in a couple of weeks to roll over to the school year 2021. And we do have a lot of the CLIC applications. When you log in, that first sheet that you see will have a link in the upper right hand, which will allow you to click and learn more about that CLIC application and the business rules and some of the technical guidance around it. SEDS and TOTES. So SEDS, once again, is our special education data system. It's a comprehensive system designed to support high quality, seamless delivery for services to our students with disability. All LEA's databases have a separate URL link If you're new and you don't know what it is, we can definitely share that with you. As well as the LEA is responsible for granting users access to SET, except for aggregate accounts. And essentially what that is that if you have, for instance, a related service provider that may provide services to students at your LEA and another LEA, so we need to give them an aggregate account at OSSE so they can see both LEAs and not have two different accounts in the system. And so that's just a way where they can get to different LEA sites without having different logins. And you just submit an OST ticket, or your SPED coordinator can go ahead and submit a certificate, an OST ticket for that. TOTE, which is the Transportation Online Tool for Education, is an application used by LEAs to submit transportation requests for students with disabilities who meet the eligibility criteria according to the OSSE transportation policy and have transportation as a service listed on their current IEP, or if they have a 504 accommodation that requires transportation. We do have some resources linked on here as well. I think we've had questions along the way. If you have any questions for those who have remained on the line, thank you again. You can throw them in the chat or raise your hand and we'll address them. I'm just going to let you know, as an LEA Data Manager, you definitely want to be part of the LEA Look Forward weekly newsletter from OSSE. It provides announcements, policies, things that you can think of. Everyone at OSSE tries to send their information through here to reach out to everyone on this call and other LEAs. And so there's a way you can go ahead and definitely register. Like I said, this PowerPoint should be posted on the OSSE website, and we can send a link out via email. Also, we have monthly data discussions meetings. So definitely how you register for this training, go ahead and register again. Register for the monthly trainings that are coming, in-person, webinar, and we also record it and have it available on the website. These are some quick tips about stage 4 and stage 5. And then there's additional resources at the bottom of the PowerPoint where you can have links to various information we talked about in this session. For training content, policy contents, things of that nature. There will be an enrollment audit and duplicative enrollment trainings coming down the pipeline. Keep your eyes open for those. Don't forget the 2020-21 start of school. Announcements are available. There we have a website on our main page. That's one of the cards that slides through. Definitely check it out. And we do have additional trainings this week and the subsequent weeks coming down the pipeline. If you're interested, you can register for them. Okay, so if you don't have any questions, if you're high school or middle school serving those grade levels, then we do have a 2020 Kids Talk that will be held on August the 13th virtually. So if you're a part of that, please join. If you don't have anything else, we thank you for coming out today. Like I said, this will be posted to everyone. Okay, I didn't see any more questions or hands raised on the line. I thank everyone for coming out. It's just a different additional information in the end of this PowerPoint. Okay. If you don't have any questions, thank you very much for your attendance. Definitely reach out to your data liaisons if you do not know them. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to Leah and I for any further questions or answers that you may need. Thank you very much for attending this year's new LEA Data Managers training. I hope you are very successful this year. And this was just a prelude into what you're responsible for coming down the pipeline, thank you very much and have a great day, everyone.